Suburban Sentinel here, along with Bella the camera cat. This is episode number 5 of our series on gun purchasing strategies. And in the last episode, we set the table for fun gun buying, or purchasing a firearm that is more of an indulgence rather than a need. My purpose here is not to tell you which fun gun, if any, to buy. Rather, my purpose here is to establish a methodology by which you can rely on to determine whether or not you should purchase a fun gun. The big question, whether or not one should spend their hard-earned money on a fun gun, can be answered in a two-part strategy. So let's get to part 1. Part 1 consists of 6 individual yes or no questions, and we will address each one in turn. Question number 1. Are all of your absolute needs covered? Again, as we discussed in episode number 1, there are 2 types of needs, absolute and relative. Absolute needs are those which are required to maintain your survival, such as food, shelter, medicine. Certainly, you shouldn't be spending money on an indulgence like a fun gun if you do not have sufficient funds to cover your absolute needs. That's practically a no-brainer. By the way, if you want to see the background information concerning needs and wants and all the information we discussed previously, I will leave the links to the episodes in the comments section down there. Question number 2. Are all of your relative needs covered? And again, relative needs vary from person to person and from society to society, but generally we consider relative needs those things which make your life demonstrably better. In our society, in the West, particularly in America, those things often include automobiles, cell phones, savings and retirement plans, and insurances. Make sure all of your relative needs are adequately funded, not forever, but for the immediate time period before you buy an indulgence item. Question number 3. Do you have all of the money for the object or the fun gun or whatever you want to buy saved up? You want to pay for indulgence items up front. And we'll talk more about that later. Question number 4. Are you reasonably sure you really want the item? Now, certainly I can't tell any one of you out there what you really want, but I think there are some good indicators that work for most people. First, have you wanted the item for a good long time? With many people, they see an item and it suits their fancy at the time, and they get it right away, and of course we call that impulse buying. And generally you want to avoid impulse buys with just nice to have items. Another good indicator of whether you really want the item is your personal past history. Do you have a collection of quote-unquote must-have purchases collecting dust in your home? If so, there's a fairly good chance that the item you desire today, you may not desire tomorrow. So be careful with that. Question number 5. Does the value of the item you're considering buying exceed its opportunity cost? What is opportunity cost? This is a term derived from the study of economics, which summarizes the basic relationship between scarcity and choice. The cost of choosing one mutually exclusive item over another is an opportunity cost for making your selection. And that is assuming money is limited and you can't buy everything you want at a single point in time. Let's assume that today you have $500 to spend on a gun. If you buy a brand new Glock today, you will not be able to buy a brand new Smith & Wesson M&P today, assuming that you're paying cash and you're not stealing one or more of the items. In this example, if you decide to purchase the Glock, not having the M&P is the opportunity cost. This is a fundamental economic attribute of having limited resources. Also note that the concept of opportunity cost works with time and other resources besides money. So let's assume that you have a week's vacation. If you decide to spend a week's vacation at Yellowstone, that means that you can't go to the Grand Canyon in that same week as well. So if you wanted to visit both places, the cost of going to Yellowstone, or the opportunity cost of going to Yellowstone, is that you won't be able to go to the Grand Canyon at that same time. So consider your opportunity costs very carefully in choosing an item. And I'm going to give you a real-world example. I have a custom-made flight jacket that I received as a gift several decades ago. Now somehow, this jacket no longer fits me. I suppose it somehow shrank around my gut over the years. I guess it's just one of those things. Maybe it was a defect in the cowhide or something. So anyway, the jacket doesn't fit anymore, and I guess about 1.5 years ago, I started shopping around for a replacement jacket. And I almost settled on buying this beautiful custom-made horsehide flight jacket that I think I would have probably for the rest of my life. The jacket was $1,800 plus shipping and insurance from Scotland. When push came to shove and I was all ready to buy the jacket, had the money saved up and everything, but I went through this same analysis we're doing right now, and I looked at the opportunity cost. About $2,000, although the jacket was worth every dime of $2,000 to me, there was just too much other stuff I could get or value I could derive from that $2,000. So I bagged the purchase, at least for now. Maybe in the future, but not getting it right now. I decided to do something else. My wife has been looking for a major league wardrobe update, and she started saving for it. But what I decided to do was take $1,500 and put that towards her wardrobe so she can complete her purchases now rather than 6 months or a year from now. The remaining $500, I decided we should take that money and go on a long weekend because we had to skip a vacation due to business requirements. So her wardrobe update and the long weekend I traded for that jacket. The satisfaction I derive out of an additional long weekend plus the satisfaction of seeing her happy is worth more to me than that beautiful but extravagant flight jacket. Question number 6. Will you own the fun gun instead of it owning you? You want to make sure that the burden of owning an object is less than the enjoyment you'll get out of it. And I think the best way to explain this is by example. A friend of mine has always loved classic Mustangs. So he went out and bought a fully restored 66 Mustang, a beautiful car. The problem is he's so worried about something happening to the car that he never takes it out of the garage, not even in the nice summer weather. The car sits in the garage with a nice cover over it, and he washes it and waxes it, starts the engine occasionally. But to be honest with you, he never really gets any enjoyment out of it. So perhaps he just likes having it, but the burden of paying for the car, maintaining insurance on it, having to use half of his garage to store it, and then do maintenance on it, to me, just isn't worth it. Now, whether you own the object or vice versa is kind of a personal thing. But I put together a checklist that I use as a fairly good indicator of whether my possessions are worth the burden of having them. So I'm just going to tick these off to you one at a time. Can I pay cash for it? If one has to finance an item, there's more of a chance of feeling like you become a hostage to that item. Another question. Can I afford to replace the item within a year? Now, this doesn't apply to all items, obviously. Not my home, not my cars, but if there's an item that I just want and feel like having, if I can't afford to replace the item within a year if something happened to it, I'm going to have second thoughts. Could I give this item to my best friend tomorrow and still feel good about it? Another question. Will I still sleep soundly if the item is damaged, lost, or destroyed? Is there room in my life for this item? In other words, do you have too much stuff already? Too much to think about, too much to maintain, too little space? And if that answer is yes, that's certainly not fatal, because you can consider letting something else go to make the space. If you want a fun gun now and you have 10 other fun guns, well, perhaps it's time to get rid of one. If you've answered yes to all of the 6 preceding questions, then move on to part 2. Okay, here we go. Part 2, additional considerations. Now, I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade, but I want to go through some good reasons not to buy a fun gun or any other indulgence item. Number 1, using objects to try to cure unhappiness. Stuff, again, remember how we define stuff, will not make you happy. Some people honestly believe that buying things or having stuff will increase their happiness or make them less unhappy. And nothing could be further from the truth. This has become a disease in American society, and many of us suffer from this disease I call more. And your history can be a good indicator of whether you're suffering from this chronic disease called more. Do you have a lot of quote-unquote stuff that you bought that at the time you just had to have that you don't even notice anymore? Many of us do. And it's an indicator of a bigger problem. We're trying to cure unhappiness with stuff. And it's like trying to dig a hole in the ocean. Second big reason not to buy an indulgence item is habit. Many of us buy things that we really don't absolutely need or relatively need, again, which I call stuff, based on some habit or boredom. I have a very close friend, a woman who, when she was a child, she and her mother would go clothes shopping every Sunday, and they would buy clothes for both of them. And they did this almost religiously for years on end. And my friend continued with this habit even when she became a grown woman. And she had a hell of a big closet full of clothes, a lot of them still with the tags on them, and a huge credit card debt for all her trouble. Moving on to number 3, reason not to buy an indulgence item: to look cool or fit in. Now, this probably doesn't apply to guns as much as other items, but this is a big issue with a lot of people, especially you younger folks. Self-esteem ultimately comes from self. Letting other people define you by your possessions is needlessly giving away your power and self-worth. This is one of my favorite quotes, and unfortunately I don't know who to attribute it to, but it goes, "Your opinion of me is none of my business." And again, your opinion of me is none of my business. And that is a phrase worthy of your consideration. Well, Wiley the cat decided to join Bella. Come on, buddy. Fourth reason not to purchase an indulgence item: trying to recapture that which you no longer are or something you never were. Again, this often doesn't apply to guns, but it is a good thing to keep in mind. And I think the best way to explain this is by example. And I'm sure all of you out there have seen them. Maybe you even were one or are one. Is an older gentleman driving a convertible sports car trying to impress young ladies. They buy, Corvettes or convertible BMWs or whatever and drive around trying to look cool to the younger girls. And I can almost guarantee, with few exceptions, that when those girls smile and giggle, they're laughing at those guys. So if you're considering buying an indulgence item for any of these reasons, even if you said yes to the first 6 questions, please reconsider. In conclusion, it, at least for me, takes a lot of hoops to jump through before buying an indulgence item. Needless to say, I don't have very many indulgence items, and that works just fine for me. But I want to reiterate, I'm not here to talk anyone out of buying a fun gun. On the contrary, I would really like to have a fun gun. My primary purpose here is to make sure that you have the best chance of having a positive ownership experience with anything that you buy. So this is the Suburban Sentinel, along with both Wiley and Bella the cats, saying thanks for watching, and please subscribe. Questions and enlightening comments are always welcome. This is a chance for you to win my latest unannounced contest. In a moment, I'm going to put a contest code on the screen. All you have to do is send me a comment, and I don't care if it's inside another comment or a standalone comment, doesn't matter. If you send me in the comments section the contest code and you're the first one to send the comment with the code, you win the prize. So the first one to send the code back in a comment, not a PM, in a comment, so I have to be able to track who's actually the first one, wins the prize. Spelling counts, capitalization does not. So be the first one to put the code in the comments section.